Welcome to Cafeína Catracha podcast, produced by IWCA Honduras. We delve into a wide range of coffee-related topics, from the cultural significance of this beloved beverage to the intricacies of coffee farming, processing, policies, and market trends. Also feature exciting segments on coffee-related news and events. We believe that coffee is more than just a drink. It's a culture. So whether you're a coffee lover, a coffee producer, a professional in the industry, Cafeína Catracha podcast is for you. Tune into our podcast and let us take you into a journey to explore the fascinating world of coffee like never before.
Welcome back to our new episode of Cafeína Catracha podcast, the podcast that loves to explore the coffee community and their rich culture. We are going to be your host. My name is Orieta Alvarenga.
And I am Carla Calidonio. During this new season, we will explore the stories and the insights from coffee professionals and from experts that have made their mark in the industry. With a weekly schedule, we will take you in a journey to discover the fascinating nuances and complexities of coffee like never before.
You are right, Carla. Here we are all passionate of all aspects in the coffee industry, from the history to the cultural significance to the intricate details of the coffee production to the market reach. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, come on along with us and enjoy this episode.
And we also have some interesting interviews.
You're right, Carla. This episode, actually, we're going to learn about the importance of building a long-lasting relationship between the coffee producer to the coffee buyer, okay? So we are going to learn about the buyer's perspective from the creators of two relevant coffee events. For example, we have Martin Mayorga with Mayorga Coffee and Henry Wilson from PRF.
And also we complement with two other important people, David Griswold and Jorge Cuevas from Sustainable Harvest.
As we prepare to kick off this episode, we'd like to extend a special thanks to our sponsors. Cafeína Catracha podcast is brought to you by IWCA Honduras and is sponsored by Café Inclusivo Swiss Contact, in partnership with Let's Talk Coffee, Sustainable Harvest, PRF San Salvador, Mayorga Coffee, and E-Café.
Hi, I'm Martin Mayorga. I'm the CEO and founder of Mayorga Coffee. We are a U.S. roaster, and we've been in business about 25 years. We are the diamond sponsor of the Producer Roaster Forum, and we're here in El Salvador celebrating the Producer Roaster Forum of 2023. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. As a woman, we can change the standards of how we can access to the market and sell our coffee.
I think first as farmers, we need to, as an industry, give farmers a bigger platform. I think the industry can do a much better job than it has. That's my focus in trying to do that by coming to our countries and being here. I think as women, like anything else, there definitely needs to be a balancing and opportunities for women to represent coffee, represent the family, the community, which is really, I think, one of the beautiful things that the women's representation brings into any industry, especially in coffee, where it's so community driven, so community focused, and very family focused, because a lot of very small farmers it's a family farm, it's a family business, and it's a multi-generational family business. So definitely, I think women's presence in coffee, we need to support more, and I think will only enhance lives for producers and their families.
Awesome. What's for you Orgullo Latino? Can you talk more about this?
So I immigrated into the United States I lived in Latin America till I was a young kid. And unfortunately in the 80s, because I'm not that young anymore, but in the 80s, I had to become very American to be accepted. And then when I got older, I realized that I wanted to actually celebrate who I am and my background, my roots, my family, my culture, my countries, my food. And that's when that kind of came out and said, look, I'm proud of who I am. And instead of becoming somebody else, I'm going to really celebrate who I am and the things that come with that. You know, the food I like, the colors, the places I like to go, the people I like to be with. So to me, it's about being who you are. And really, it's a representation for Latinos and, you know, in any part of the world, but it's really for any human, right? Be who you are, be proud of it, represent it, and use it as your strength and use it as your force to go out into the world and make a difference.
Okay. How do you see women in the coffee industry?
I mean, very critical. I think that in my world of coffee, which we focus on the more small, remote farmers, like I said, it's very much family. It's very much community. I think in any family, in any community, everybody has a role. Everybody has an important role. And, you know, I think the old days of the machismo and the men being out, you know, working in the field and generating business are behind us. And I think when we integrate women, we get there's more balance, there's more ideas, there's more everything positive, right? So I think, you know, it's a necessity. And I think that it also brings a human aspect that we all need, which is the balance of everybody in the family. You know, when I go to farms, I don't just see the main owner or the main person who might be the male. There's always family there. There's either a wife or a sister or children. And so for me, it's all about elevating the entire family's impact on what we're doing, and then on the impact of what we're doing to the family as well.
Okay, and as what advice you can give to young women farmers that are incurring in this coffee world? I mean, what you can tell us about?
You know, I think, and I mentor a lot of, you know, either business owners or farmers, men and women. And I think the advice is the same, which is believe in what you really, you know, whatever you really believe in it to the point that you have no fear, because the belief is going to override everything you do. But also have a model, understand that farming is a business. You know, having a coffee farm, at the end of the day, is a business. It has costs, it has sales, it has good and bad impacts financially. And I think it's understanding that it's a business. And, you know, I think understanding that and that's kind of for everybody. I think for women, look, we're in a good time in society where don't be afraid to have a voice. Don't be afraid to really realize that we need everybody that at the family level, at the farm level to contribute and to have a voice. So I think, and I would say that to anybody, you know, I think one of the beautiful things at my age I've seen is coming from society that used to oppress people for the way they look, their sex, whatever. And now we're in a society where it's open. So now let's just push forward and make an impact and realize that those of us who didn't have a voice and fought for a voice are always going to be out here fighting, you know, for the future. But then we owe it to the next generation that we have to push doors open. We have to take opportunities because there's people behind us, our children and people who even see us on social media. We have to be good examples, men, women, anybody. We just have to lead by example.
Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate you being here with you and to contribute with Cafeína Catracha Honduras. And awesome. Nice to meet you too.
You too. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Harry Wilson.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, can you talk us all about this PRF experience and what it's about here to be here?
Of course. Well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's a pleasure to be here. And secondly, so this is the 6th edition of the Producer Roaster Forum event. We've done the event in Honduras, we've done it in Guatemala, we've done it in Colombia, Brazil, El Salvador, but now we're coming back to El Salvador again. The vision of the event is to create a customized event based on the needs of roasters, but most importantly, producers. Today at the event, we have around 2,500 attendees. We have cupping rooms, we have the exhibitor zone, we have the roasting competition, we have the cold brew competition, we have the workshop arena, we have the auditorium, and we have a host of activities. For us, the goal is to create a world-class event which is accessible and relevant to the needs of producers, and with the specific goal of building meaningful, long-term commercial relationships. So what we want is the producers to come here, doesn't matter how experienced they are, and take some practical information with them. Ideally, generate business relationships with roasters. But if that's not possible, at least perhaps meet someone local, a cooperative they can work with, an exporter they can work with, or perhaps even learn about how they can better manage their costs. Today, we have, like I mentioned, around 2,500 attendees, but we also have roasters from about 60 different countries. And for me, that's what makes this event special.
Okay, how was your experience of connecting with the women's producers and the buyer beings?
For us, it's a priority to have the participation of women in this event, because we can't deny that the industry is more male-dominated. So when we were reviewing the becals, we have a program called the Mayorga becals or scholarship, whereby they pay for the entrance of 500 producers. And with this, we prioritize the participation of women and smallholder producers. For me, I think that we always need to do more to encourage the participation of women farmers. However, I'm very, very pleased to see that there are women here from El Salvador, from Honduras, from Guatemala, even from Peru, that are here meeting producers. I would have to follow up and try and get as much information as possible. But the priority for us is that people are generating meaningful relationships. Also, we have the participation of the IWCA as well. And we have taken an effort to try and maximize the participation of women speakers in the event.
Okay. It's necessary that women get more involved in the participation of speakers, events, and coffee environment.
It's absolutely essential that we ensure the participation of women in all events and also throughout the coffee supply chain from seed to cup. For us, we aim always when we start off to try and have more women than men as speakers. I'm not going to deny it's quite challenging just because of how male dominated the industry is. But I'm very, very proud to say that honestly some of the best speakers we have are women. And we invite them not because they're women, but because they have outstanding knowledge and experience to share. What I would like to do in future events is make an even bigger effort, particularly with the international guests.
Okay, so we are really pressured to be here with you in PRF 2023 in Salvador and collaborating with podcast Cafeína Catracha Honduras.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me.
We are in Copandrinas, this wonderful city, and the home of Let's Talk Coffee 2023. And we are with David Griswold, who is the founder of Sustainable Harvest and Let's Talk Coffee. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
And let's talk about this event here. It's been a long way until we finally got to Copandrinas.
Right.
Why did you decide to do it here?
Well, I was looking for a location. I think it was last year, about this time last year, thinking about where was going to be after COVID our Let's Talk Coffee event. So we had been doing this since 2003, so that's almost 20 years. And each year we would take Let's Talk Coffee to a new producing country. So we've done it in Guatemala and Costa Rica and Panama and Colombia and Nicaragua and El Salvador, but we've never done it in Honduras. And so I went to the Specialty Coffee Association event, which happens in this last year was in Boston. And I went to a special event. And as I came up the escalator, I met some people from eCafe, Orieta and Nestor. And I don't know, were you there? You weren't there yet,
No.
Right? And but quickly they just started to talk about Honduras as a country that needed to be discovered by specialty. And I thought, Honduras is such an important player, but so misunderstood as a country. So I knew people would be nervous about Honduras because it has a reputation for the bad news. And I didn't know if that was true or not, but they encouraged me to come down and look at the country. So in May, and that's when I met you and Nestor and just the whole team from eCafe. And what a great welcoming experience that was. You remember?
Yes, I do.
And we went around and we looked at lots of locations. And at the very end, partly by luck, we got over to see this incredible location of the convention center at Copan Ruinas. And I don't think even people in Honduras knew quite what was here because COVID had kept us all locked down. And the road from 2 hurricanes in 2020, I think it was, had really ruined the carretera. The road. And people said, oh, it's too difficult to get to. But there we were, myself and my Let's Talk Coffee architect, Alfonso Carmona, and I think Orietta was driving. And at other times we had Nestor. We were just going to figure out where could we have it. Yeah. And so here we are now. It's amazing to see it reality.
And what about the people that is here, that is doing the agenda, that is doing these wonderful talks and panels? What was the answer of them when you say, let's go to Honduras and let's do it in Copan Ruinas?
Well, I think people were initially a little nervous, or also people were having a difficult time getting ready to get out of COVID. And as you know, you've probably seen airplane flights have gone up a lot, right? What used to cost $300 or $400 to come to Honduras now is $1,100 from the United States. So there were a lot of reasons why people were hesitant. So it was really important for us to have support from eCafe so we could get speakers of really high quality to come. And of course we had to pay for their airplane flights and their hotel to make sure they would come. But what that meant was that at this event we have now over 25 countries and over almost 350 international and Honduran guests. It's an extraordinary international event, probably the largest that I would say Honduras may have had in recent memory in coffee. Yeah. And certainly at Copan Ruinas. So that's what we built. So it was very important. You were asking how did we get these speakers? So I go around the world literally to every coffee show and I ask people who's doing something really innovative. Who do farmers need to hear from? Because a lot of our model is about leveling the playing field. You can go to a conference at the Swiss Coffee Association, or you can go to the Specialty Coffee Association of the World of America. You can go to maybe even Sinter Cafe over in Costa Rica. But we created a conference with Let's Talk Coffee where we really bring the best speakers, translation, and really think about the producers that need to hear this. And I think that's why it seems a little special. It's unlike, at least my experience of it, it's unlike other coffee shows. And maybe you feel that too, being here.
Well, what I feel also is, we can see the future, what is coming, what is the next thing that we need to be aware of.
Yeah.
And of course, the maybe the role models that otherwise we wouldn't be aware of. This is an alliance of women. I can say that there is a lot of female presence in the panels. And not only because they are females, it's because they are building something new, as you say. So what is your impression, about I'm not sure if to say the request of the market about female presence or the need of the market, but how did you also balance the presence of males and females doing the panels and telling stories?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you look at most coffee shows and most conferences, it's a lot of white men like me on panels. And if we're going to see real change happen, we have to create space and give people the opportunity to speak. I think the numbers here show almost 50% of the speakers are women, and about 45% of those are also young people. So that'd be 21 to 39 years old. We call them next generation. So if you don't create the space, and if you don't actually implement with making a decision, if I have to choose between a man and a woman, of course I would, both may be equal, but if I have to make a choice on the balance right now, if we're really going to change the experience of what we're learning from maybe the last 20 or 30 years, you just have to give some space. You just have to make that change. And I think that the nice thing is we're not saying all women. We're saying let's just balance it so that the panels are balanced. And people find that the insights from both genders are really valuable. So it just didn't have to be one-sided, right? You know, it's not a fight between, and it's certainly not to score any points for Let's Talk Coffee. It's just we want to hear more new ideas. And if we don't get the women's perspective, if they're always sort of, it's only men in the front and the women are all, you know, not really feeling invited and empowered, then we're missing out. So now, as a company, I've been involved with some of the biggest women coffee programs for now 20 years. The first women's coffee in specialty coffee came through us. It was from Nicaragua. She spoke here, Las Hermanas. We were working with IWCA very early on. Bloomberg Foundation of the Mayor of New York gave us millions of dollars to do the largest gender program in all of Africa, 40,000 women trained for 6 years, right? So we have always felt that the way to change agriculture is to try some new things, and if it works, make it work. And having women as part of the conversation of agriculture has been a complete success.
And that, well, the future, you know, of this model of relationship.
Yeah.
At the end is people to people.
Yeah.
You know, at the end, you need to hear and you need to trust the buyer and the seller.
Yeah. I think that's what makes business more fun, and I think it makes business more profitable. So that's a win-win.
Well, David, thank you so much for this interview. And well, for those people that are waiting for Let's Talk Coffee, I'm sure that it will be some information in the media so they can follow the social media.
Yeah, and letstalkcoffee.org is the website. And I hope we're coming back to Honduras someday.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We are here in Copan Ruinas, the set of Let's Talk Coffee 2023. For me, it's a great pleasure to introduce you to Jorge Cuevas, the Chief Coffee Officer of Sustainable Harvest. Hello, Jorge, and tell us about what it means to be the Chief Coffee Officer.
Yes, well, it's a very unique title. As you can imagine, when I first got it, I said, are you sure about that? But yes, indeed. So Chief Coffee Officer for us, a coffee trading company, a coffee importing company, means that I get to work with our supply channels, the supply network entirely. We have growers and supply partners, producer partners from Mexico, all the way down to Brazil, East Africa, Indonesia. So my primary job was to work in the coordination with all of our supply network, but also be the link to the roasters. As we know very well, you need the commercial access. You need to be a bridge to the marketplace. And I also have a role and participate ensuring that the fine coffees that are produced throughout the world find a home in the consumer markets.
And you mentioned something about connection and about relationships as well. So tell us about the importance of that relation between the producer and the final consumer.
Sure, that's an excellent point, because coffee can be like many other commercial activities. It can be transactional. It can be simply the numbers. Does it match? Does it not match? Is there a margin or not? But coffee, as you know very well, is growing in communities, by people, by families, with a culture, with a legacy, with aspirations and dreams. And we want to tell those stories and convey, put a human face to what is behind a cup of coffee. So the effort has been lessening the importance of the transactional side and making more of a human effort.
And every time, Jorge, that we drink a cup of coffee in the morning in a consuming country, for example, we can imagine, the back of that cup of coffee, the producer, what it takes to roast the coffee, who roasts the coffee, who grown the coffee, and who made it possible from the producer to get to the roastery and to the consumer. And part of that is exactly your job, that link, that connection.
It is. So like many modern day complex supply chains, coffee has many elements, many people who are there to add value to the chain. And we need to acknowledge them and recognize that everybody plays a role. As long as you add value, as long as it's done transparently, professionally, it's perfectly fine. Whether it is logistics, quality, growing, agroecology, it can be distribution, marketing. Any of those roles play a key element in the success of a coffee supply chain.
And you started with Sustainable Harvest almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, 21 years ago, 22, yeah.
21 years. So you have been through many phases of the
of the coffee market. And after the pandemic of COVID-19, this is the first event that you do in a producing country. And how do you think is going with the people that is here right now in Let's Talk Coffee? What do you think that will be the next steps in the coffee market?
Yeah, very true. So if you think about our last event was in Colombia in 2018. So the year right before the pandemic changed everything for us. So what we see with our participants today, and remember, we have in excess of 300 participants, 28 countries represented. People just want a sense of connection. They want a sense of, let's just catch up with one another. I know that I have suffered, but how are you? And how did you fare? And how are you doing? So the key and the theme from what I've heard this morning in the event has been transparency, has come up repeatedly, but also connectivity, community, building community across all of the actors in the coffee supply chain to share our challenges. These are difficult times. It's okay that the conversation is about what the difficulties we're facing, but we will only be able to solve them together and not isolating ourselves. That will be counterproductive.
And of course, we need to talk about women. Yes. Since Cafeína Catracha podcast is mainly for a female group of women working in the coffee chain. What is your perspective about women in coffee in general? What have you learned in all these years?
It's been a fascinating journey. At first glance, when I first learned about women-grown coffee or cooperatives or group or associations of women, it sounded strange. It sounded like it was a division. But then you understood what it was behind it. Number one, elements of equity and equality. It's about raising the voices of women who are braving all the challenges, all of the headwinds, bring them all together. And interestingly enough, the marketplace, particularly in the United States, responded really, really well, because it turns out that mostly when people go shopping for coffee to the supermarket, many of those were women. They could relate to women-grown coffee and to their own realities and to their own efforts and challenges. Similarly, at coffee shops, it turns out the vast majority of coffee shop managers are women. And they could, again, relate to coffee being grown by women and that support their communities. So it was this sisterhood that developed. And that's why one of the most famous women-grown coffees in the world is Las Hermanas, right? So the sisters or the sisterhood. And you can just see that solidarity behind it. Besides, as you know, it's delicious coffee.
And what do you think that it will be the link between women in producing countries and women in consuming countries? Mm-hmm. As you say, there is a community in there and sharing experiences. In your own words, what do you think that is that link between those women?
I think from my experience in my own household, of course, and with my mom and my wife and my daughter, women sometimes carry certain burdens that are blind to all of us, that are not acknowledged, that are not recognized. And I think that's a historical fault of society. But number one, acknowledging those roles, those efforts, those contributions. But then women understand that amongst themselves better than anybody. And they can be like, oh yeah, I know what you go through. Let me lend a hand. Let me be there to help your success because I know you help my success as well.
That's very good. And I'm going to finish with something. I'm going to put this cup here with the permission of everybody. And I know that blue is your favorite color.
It is.
You told me before. So with this bracelet, this friendship bracelet, what we are going to do is to have the connection between a producing country and a consuming country as well. And those links between the coffee chain that can support us and help us, as you say, to have that connection. So we're going to share this friendship bracelet as well. And of course, to have a toast.
Of course.
For coffee.
Let's have a toast for coffee. Thanks so much to friendship and community.
Friendship and community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to our guests for sharing their amazing insights with our audience. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platforms. Also, stay connected with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube by following Cafeína Catracha HN. We love to hear from you. For more information about IWCA Honduras, kindly visit mujeresencafehn.org.
In today's episode, we learn about the critical importance of building a very close relationship between the coffee producers and the coffee buyers.
You're totally right, Carla. It's important to have that kind of relationship and have a good communication between those two. I think that's everything for today. Well, thank you very much for today's episode. Thank you for listening and supporting us. Until next week. Bye.
Cafeína Catracha podcast is an original idea and executive production created by Suyapa Franco and Marta Campos Mays.